Harmony. Welcome to episode 15 of Harmony and Friends, casual conversations about art and business. If you are joining us on the live stream and you've been here before, then you know what to expect. Sit back, relax. We're going to start the conversation in about 2 minutes. If you're new here, welcome. I'm super excited to have you here for the first time. We usually have this little countdown at the start to make sure everyone gets here in time from after they get alerted by YouTube or Instagram or wherever they have set up their reminders. Once we get going, we're going to have a few introductions from the incredible artists that are joining us to speak on the topic of the day, which is finding, or should I say, maybe developing your art style. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting conversation, and I'd love to know what you have to say on the topic as well. So feel free to throw your thoughts and your questions right on into the chat. You don't even have to wait. You can get going right now if you like. The whole idea of this format of this podcast is that you have this very casual conversation, like my little tagline says. But the idea is really, it's like meeting your favorite art business besties at your local coffee shop and talking, quote unquote, shop. These conversations are not a step-by-step tutorial. They're not an extensive deep dive course on any of the topics we discuss, but they allow you to have that real inside view, a vulnerable take on what is working for each of these artists, what's working for their art business, how are they going about things, what do they struggle with, do they have any tips and tricks that they can share with you. So it's really supposed to feel like that casual conversation that you have with your artist friends. And because I know we don't necessarily all have that community built up in our real life to be able to talk to working artists, I hope that this podcast is really able to fill a need for you. Hey, welcome to episode 15 of Harmony and Friends, casual conversations about art and business. I'm so excited that you've joined us today. We're going to get right into the artist introductions. And while we do that, let me ask you a question. If you are watching us live today, please tell us in the chat, when you hear the term art style, what comes to mind? All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi.
We're gonna skip right over the awkward phase and just ask you to introduce yourselves. So, Terry, why don't you start? Give us a minute or two, introduce yourself, your art business, anything you want to share for those of us watching that haven't met you before.
Well, I'm Terry Runyan. I'm a visual artist, creative encourager, and I love cats, and I'm going to just introduce little Riley. Oh. Wait, there's little Riley. She's the girl, and she's very particular. And hang on, I got one more. These are always the most important part of an introduction. This one's Tucker. He's an internet star. Yes. He likes to join me in creating artwork.
Tucker and Riley, welcome.
And they are my deepest and greatest inspiration. And I'm huge into painting cats. I've got a new book coming out called Painting Cats. I also had a book called Painting Happiness. I do licensing. I used to work at Hallmark for 30 years. And let's see what else. Is that 2 minutes?
That's perfect. Thank you. Wow. You opened so many questions for me in that short amount of time. I can't wait to hear all about it.
I'm sure it's all about these cats.
Some of them, like 50-50.
Okay.
Thanks for joining. Nina, how about you? Tell us a little about yourself. Oh, I can't hear you, Nina. Oh, no. Are we going to be able to hear you, or should we move on?
You could rejoin, I guess.
Hey, bring in the cats quick. Come on, Terry.
Yeah. Oh, more cats?
No good? No good.
She's got her tongue out. Wait, where are you?
Oh,
There.
Wow. Thank you for that cooperation. Nina,
On demand.
you figure out.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm back.
Yay.
Am I back?
Yes, you are
Yes.
back.
My nice mic stopped working, so that's what I was fearful of because of the cable. No, it's just like, I the only problem is, I have is technical issues. I think that's my nightmare, is like technical issues, and they always pop up. So I'm going to use now this built-in mic from my laptop, and I'm going to be happy about it because it works.
It sounds great. I hear you just fine.
And now I can do the intro now. Forget about the technical stuff. So I'm Nina. As you can see, it's also DOED. It's a name I go by for my artworks and art business and everything, but it's hard to pronounce. So I'm an illustrator and pattern designer based in Belgrade. I license my artwork for various companies that print them on fabric, clothing, stationery, books, packaging, and I don't even know. It's like various products that can have nice patterns and illustrations. And I'm also a teacher. And so far I have 18 classes on Skillshare about creativity, illustration, and pattern design. And my biggest goal with all these classes is to give my students something I call self-sustainability. So it's not me giving you the recipe to do something. It's basically giving you a knowledge and sharing my experience so you can have the recipe that you can follow on your own.
That's really incredible. That's the whole, teaching to fish, right, mentality.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad your mic is working. Lauren, how about you? Give us a little intro.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Lauren Lesley. I'm a textile designer and surface pattern designer. I actually got started as a fine art major in college and then sort of found textile design through working. I was a graphic designer first and then went on to join textile design and home decor in 2012. So I've been working as a textile designer ever since then and launched my own business, Lauren Lesley Studio in 2019. But yeah, I've been working as a textile designer and surface pattern designer ever since. I have my fabrics or my artwork licensed on fabrics as well as some kind of home decor venues. But yeah, and I also teach. Finding an art style is kind of one of my passions. I've taught classes about textile design as well in the past, but yeah, I think finding an art style is so important for someone who wants to work independently. And it's a little bit opaque on how to figure out that process. So yeah, and I also have a YouTube channel here on YouTube. So
Perfect. I've linked everyone's either like socials or YouTube website, whatever they wanted to share in the description. So if you're watching, feel free to open up another tab and have a peek at the artwork and the courses and everything that these artists offer, but don't leave. Second tab. All right, so we are going to go on to a question that I'd also like all of you to answer. We'll just reverse the order this time. So Lauren, start with you. What income streams do you have from your art? Feel free to mention numbers, but you don't have to. Just the types is fine.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I work as a textile designer and I work in the home decor industry. And in 2012, I started my own business. We actually moved to a new city for my husband's job. And so that's kind of when I went independent and started licensing and freelancing. And then kind of a long story short, I got pregnant and we were back in Atlanta at that point, and we wanted to move to a nicer neighborhood and this and that. So I actually went back to a full-time job. So I'm still currently working full-time as a textile designer and rejoined the old company that I had worked with. But one of my kind of stipulations with that was that I wanted to continue doing licensing and continue my own business. So yeah, it was kind of a financial decision at that point. So yeah, I have several different income streams, but the stability from a full-time job was just really beneficial. Also 401k, health benefits. And I have a video on my YouTube channel kind of explaining that decision going back to a full-time job. So yeah, I don't want anyone to feel bad if they're still working full-time. Like a lot of us make that decision for a lot of reasons. But yeah, just having a baby kind of, if I hadn't had a baby, I probably maybe wouldn't have made that decision. But yeah, we we decided to make that decision to move to a nicer neighborhood, have that stability, and for her. But I'm continuing to do my licensing and work on my business as well.
I appreciate that realism, because I think, for a lot of people, it's maybe aspirational to be a full-time artist, but it is very often not the story, or at least not for many years if you're on that path. So I think it's always interesting to have different voices on the podcast, different experiences. So thanks for sharing so openly.
Of course.
Nina, how about you?
Well, my two main income streams are definitely teaching and licensing. So if it's the question about art, then it will be just licensing and licensing to clients. And I'm not selling on any POD site. I didn't go into it. So I'm just collaborating with clients, and I also don't do custom projects. Because I'm just full. The schedule is just too much. So it's the way I've kind of organized it. I have the portfolio for licensing, and I do licensing, and then I do classes. So having like custom projects from clients would be too much for the whole schedule.
Yeah, I mean, you have to pick and choose, right? You can't do every single income stream. That's why it's so interesting for me to hear the mix of who's picking what and for what reason.
And I also now you reminded me, it's kind of hard to do a lot of stuff. I'm thinking like it definitely is, but I think when you establish one, and then you can build upon the other. Absolutely. So now I kind of slowly started. I made like a new brush set, which was just like it was not even a business idea. It was like, I just want to make stamps. I just got fascinated by stamps. So I thought, why not do digital stamps? So I made a brush set, and then I thought I should just make more brush sets. This is so fun, So it is kind of starting to be an income stream, but it just needs years to become like, let's say, sustainable main income stream.
Right. And I'm assuming that's like Procreate or
yes.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, no, I totally agree with the income streams. I think it's like you almost need multiple for you to be able to sustain the business. But if you're trying to do 20 things at once, that's kind of what I meant with you have to limit it. But
I know what you mean.
Artists are lucky enough to get by on like one. So
it would be perfect.
Terry, how about you?
Yes, a lot of variety in my income stream. I worked at Hallmark for 30 years, and so I totally understand the corporate situation, and I was an artist there. So that was fantastic, having all those wonderful perks of having a full-time job. But in 2016, I decided to leave the company because I really wanted to work on these larger, non-objective painting type things. So I did that for a year, didn't make anything, and then had a personal crisis and thought I needed to go back to illustration. So I really didn't have a personal crisis, but I just made that up and went back to creating lots of cats. My Instagram following started exploding. I don't know, this was maybe back in the day where those kinds of things were a little easier than they are now. And so most all of my income streams have come from my Instagram account. Maybe some from YouTube, some from my Skillshare classes. I also have, so I'm doing the Skillshare thing. That's an income. I've got income from Teachable, which I sell individual classes on. And I've got these books. This one did very well. This came out a little bit ago. This is Painting Happiness. And something fell out. So, and my new book that's coming out in September is Painting Cats, believe it or not. I don't understand why we named it that. Very odd. And, I have other books lined up that are coming, apparently. They maybe want a dog book, so that'll be interesting to do. I love painting characters. I license to fabrics. I license to lots of different things, card companies, calendars, puzzles. I'm not going to cover them all. Kitchen stuff. Plus I have my online shops. I have Etsy and my website shop where I sell all these PODs, print on demand items with my artwork. But I also sell original work on my website. And it's just comes from a lot of different places. And I think that's really important for artists to realize that we don't just have all our eggs in one basket. I mean, Instagram could blow up tomorrow, and that would be my marketing down the drain. So I've spent a lot of time building a email list, and
Nice.
I'm actually on the other side of my big, long career. And this is just all bonus for me, really, to, what's most important beyond making money is sharing and helping people to, break through those barriers they have around creating their artwork and maybe learn how to paint a cat. So that's that's kind of it.
That's really impressive stuff. And I have this really important question though.
Okay.
How are your cats going to feel about that dog book? Have you had the conversation?
I think some cats may show up in the dog book because I really love storytelling, and cats are actually jerks, and dogs are just like everybody's best friend. So I can see a lot of funny things going on in a dog book, although they'll just sneak in there. That's just part of the it's not part of the MO.
That's so cool. So for those of you watching who don't know me either, I am very much at the beginning of my art career. I have 2 tiny, minuscule income streams, which is YouTube. It took me like 3 years to monetize, and now I make a whooping 15 euros a month. I mean, I can basically retire at this point. It's really going well. No, but I'm actually, this stuff is difficult. Like, it takes time, it takes investment. So I'm actually still really happy and proud of like, okay, I've unlocked that door. And then I opened my Etsy shop like 3 weeks ago or so. And the numbers there are a little better, but I also had to invest a ton to actually, have the products made and stuff. So once you actually look at the profit, it's okay. But so that's at the very, very, very start. So I'm kind of the exact opposite probably of Terry as far as, where I am on the path. But I love having that variety. And now let us jump into the topic of the day a little more. And I'm going to ask this question. How long did it take you to develop your current art style, and how did you arrive at it? And whoever wants to go first, just jump in.
Well, I can start because I was really thinking about it. I was thinking, is it even possible to kind of pinpoint? Because I did this class about observe. I think it's called Observing is Learning, and it is about finding your style. So one part of the class is literally just that, going back to childhood, going back to things you like, to your preferences. And then I kind of, also reminded myself about, some instances when I was a child, what I liked, what kind of artists did I like. In high school, for example, I liked Matisse, and I don't what's the name of the other one? I think he's from Barcelona. Jean Miro. And then I also thought, I always liked, my style, if you saw my Instagram page or website, is just the logic of the style is literally taking complex things, seeing complex things, and then decompositioning them, and then making them simple. Again, compositioning and making them simple. So that's like the basis and the logic of the style. So if I go back, in high school, I started doing street art, and I did stencils. So stencils is like you just cut out something inside this plastic thing, and then you spray it. And it's like literally printing in the city. And to do that, like, you need to be fast so you don't get caught. and the image you need to represent needs to be simple. It cannot have lots of details. It needs to be very simple, very bold. And I always liked that. So ever since I started kind of experimenting, and the artists I like, it was always that kind of simplicity. And I was fascinated by, how they make like perspective a bit shifting and not really real. And I was never fascinated by hyperrealism, or that was just always my preference. And I thought, well, it's like it started developing ever since I was born, probably, because that's literally what is style. Style is like gathering of my preferences, visual preferences. It's also like, what kind of living room do you want to have? Do you want it maximalist, or you want it minimal with sharp lines? It's just like all these preferences are building and building. And then at this point, yes, my style looks like this because I worked, I practiced, I illustrated every day. I have now skills to represent what I want to represent. But it doesn't mean it's going to, who knows what happens in 10 years. It's going to develop somehow, because I'm going to work and experiment and get excited. And, maybe it goes somewhere totally different, or it just builds upon. But the point I wanted to make is that I think that style is literally just like a logic of how you perceive the world and how you visually want to represent it. and you have the basis. But, it's going to develop on how it looks today, how it looks in 10 years, because your experience and skills and how you're improving and learning and whatever as an artist is going to, have this visual representation. So that's my take on this question.
That's really, really interesting. So you do feel it's something that's kind of like innate and a reflection of your own kind of tastes or things that you're drawn to is then also the thing that you reflect in your own art and your style.
Yes, and I think like if you look at the street art I did, or if you look at my early illustrations, it's not, you can say, okay, this is not same as I'm doing it now, but you can see the same logic. It's not like visually represented. I don't have like preferred colors or preferred. I actually also don't have such a great drawing skills, because in a 20 years of drawing, your skills become, the way you observe things becomes more sharp. Your brain just like picks up on all these things. You're also kind of broadening your preferences. So for example, if my preference was this beautiful illustration when I was a kid, I can now look at that illustration and I can literally say, I know why I like it. It has this kind of composition. It has they use this type of negative space. They make, I can now literally understand why I like it. And then I can say, okay, I want to improve my style, not by copying the image, but I'm going to use the logic they used. So I'm improving then upon something I liked. And it also goes with reference to that Pablo Picasso famous quote he said, which is, what was it? Good artists borrow or copy, and then great artists steal, which is like sometimes I think misinterpreted. But my interpretation is, if you copy literally, this is just you copying someone's style. But if you steal, it's not stealing the art, it's stealing the idea. You're stealing like the way he solve the problem and obstacle. You're stealing the idea and then improving your own idea and making something else. I think I now went off the topic, so I'm gonna
No. I was kind of on what you said a little earlier, which is that because like I think, okay, so Terry has a few images prepared and I do of my own artwork, and I don't know if I can like just agree with what you said from my own life, because you're going to look at my style and be like, what is going on? Like there is no like, oh yes, this is consistent. Like, so I think maybe that's true for some people, or maybe you can see something in it that I don't. But I think it's really cool that that is your story. As far
when
as
you show your art, I'm gonna grab one paste up poster from high school, and I'm gonna put it next to this, and you're gonna say, no, that's not it. But then I will, you will see that the base is the same.
I love it. Thank you for sharing so much. Who wants to give their insight next?
I can. So yeah, I kind of agree with you, Harmony. Like I feel like in school, I started out with realism style because that's kind of what we were taught. And I was actually an oil painter in college. That was my major. So it was a lot more realistic, but I definitely was stylizing some elements of it. But I think one thing I've always been drawn to was color. So I feel like there are some things that are consistent with developing my art style, even from an early age. But yeah, it was kind of like going from this realism-ish style in oil painting and then being kind of thrown into a graphic design job where I had to think commercially and learn how to use Illustrator, actually. So it wasn't even Photoshop, it was Illustrator, and learn how to do things a lot more flat without too much volume. But again, kind of bringing those fundamentals with me that I learned in terms of being able to draw, being able to, have that composition that was interesting, color placement, bits of texture, things like that. So all of those fundamentals definitely came into that very first like graphic design job that I had, but it was having to think more with a commercial brain. And from there, it was kind of figuring out, well, I never really loved graphic design. It was just, in my day and age, like I didn't even know what surface pattern design was. I didn't know what textile design was. I went to a liberal art school. So really like fine art was the only thing that I knew about. I'm from a small town. So everyone asked me, oh, like you're an art major, so you're going to teach? Like that was the only career path people really knew about. And I was kind of like, I mean, I guess I could, but that's not really what I want to do. Like, I want to be, have, more of a progressive career. And the funny thing is now I do teach some online classes, but, but then, it was like around that time, I'm kind of showing my age, but that's when, Pinterest first came out. Like, we didn't even have Pinterest when I was in school. Etsy came out. That's when I first learned of Etsy. So I was starting to discover other artists that I was really inspired by. And that may have been illustrators at the time, but also I learned about pattern design. And I was like, that's the thing. Like, that's what I want to do. And so I just practiced every night and like built up my portfolio. And I think that helped me land an in-house job, right? So building my portfolio, I was able to do things that were commercially viable, from honestly looking at other artists, again, not copying, but taking those same principles and the logic behind it. Like you said, that's a really good word, kind of the logic behind it, and seeing like how this can be applied. And so that landed me an in-house job where I also learned a ton, and I think that if you are really struggling to learn that commercial side, getting an in-house job can be really, really beneficial because you learn so much also about business. And so like, I think the art business side is what a lot of artists struggle with as well. So I feel like my years in-house were really invaluable. The problem with working in-house for so long is that you kind of learn to do any style, right? Because you are fulfilling what the customer wants or a certain trend. And so you become very flexible. And there may be certain styles that you're more drawn to than others, and there definitely are, but sometimes you start to lose a little bit of what's original to me. By working in-house or by working in many different styles. And if you're like me, like I'm inspired by a lot of different things. And there's a lot of different styles that I could do or enjoy doing. And so it was really when I went independent in 2019 for a few years that I was going to exhibit at Blueprint. That's a trade show for those of you who might not know. And I needed a body of work to bring. And I created about 90 pieces of work to bring to that trade show. And in that process was when I feel like I really started to develop my own style, because I had to make those works cohesive. I couldn't just bring a bunch of random stuff that didn't go together because, again, like sometimes you want to sell a collection or a hero print with coordinates, things like that. And so I feel like that process of going to the trade show is what really helped me develop my style. But yeah, what's the other question? How did you arrive at it? How long did it take? I mean, yeah. So I think that actually took me about 3 months, but I had those foundational skills of, going to art school, working in-house.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll never.
I had to whip it out.
Anything like that.
Yeah. But you're doing watercolor. I did.
That's incredible. Wow.
Thank you.
But again, actually, I think that speaks a lot to commercially viable artists as well, right? Like you need to be able to produce collections like that. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think if you're trying to create 90 cohesive pieces, that would really cement a style, right? I mean, That's a lot of practice and focus. So that's a very good tip, even if someone's not going to a trade show.
And I don't keep up that same like schedule. Like I'm not creating that amount now, definitely not. But I think just the pressure of like, I have to get this done for this trade show. Right. And like, I don't want to wait till the next year. Cause that's like, if you want to do licensing, it already takes a long time to get a paycheck from that. So it was like, I have to get this done. So I just like, I really cranked it out. And like, not everything was like an amazing piece, but and there were coordinates and things that I like,
I get it
from other pieces, but
I work well with deadlines, so that makes total sense to me. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. That's a really interesting path as well. And to kind of hear the pros and cons of working in-house is an interesting perspective. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Terry, how about you? Should I bring up your images? Do you want to talk about those while you ask this question?
Well, how about a little bit further into it here? Because there's a lot of stuff that happened before those images happened.
All right.
I was pretty much a torture artist when I was younger. My mom was an artist, and I kind of latched onto things. I think I had a lot of insecurities. I really never thought I was an artist and didn't know there was such a thing as a career in art. I don't know what I thought, how I thought these Saturday Evening Post illustrations were being done, or I just didn't. It didn't clue in on me. So I did draw some then during, before college, and experimented with different things and basically just didn't want to do it at all. I felt so insecure about everything I was doing. It was having a very hard time with my self-esteem. And I did hear about illustration as a career and cobbled together some drawings and different things to get into the school. It was San Jose State. And they accepted me. And I was wishing the school would burn down as I drove there. I was just, anyway, got there, I didn't graduate till I was 29. Yeah, started in 26. I was a late bloomer. And Hallmark hired me from school. So talk about a jack of all trades. I totally get it. I mean, I really struggled. I thought I had to find a style like a lot of us do. I kind of learned that, I don't know. I wanted a comfort zone because I was so uncomfortable creating. I used to do hyperrealism, a lot of drawing classes, and I never felt like I was great at drawing. I mean, it took too long. All the paintings I did were so detailed that it just felt like it was kind of almost torturous. And when I was working at Hallmark, I was still sort of, I started off as a redesign artist, actually an associate redesign artist, where this is before the computer came into Hallmark. So that was I started there in 1986. Okay. Let's age ourselves. And I'm just 65 now. So just so you're not trying to add up anything. So anyway, what was I saying? Oh gosh, I've just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, redesign artist.
Yeah, so associate redesign artist. So I was working on artwork that other artists did to change a birthday to a Christmas or whatever they wanted me to do. I was also doing from start to finish, where I wasn't working on another artist's work, but I was emulating their work. So I was doing all kinds of different things. And I really wanted to get in as an original artist. So I started turning in lots of projects and stuff. I was really good at ideating I would look at, I don't know if Pinterest was yet a thing at that point or not, but I was big into researching. I was actually just absolutely addicted to researching and looking at other artists' work and playing with things and trying stuff. So I'm hoping I'm not going to make this too long. So then I went to Hallmark and I did all these different things. And eventually, unbeknownst to me, I mean, like other people told me, they were seeing it. Oh, you have a style. And I was like, what the heck? I have no idea. Other people had to let me know. They saw my hand in my work. And so that was curious. And at that point, I was starting to do a whole lot more inner reflection and getting a broader vision of who I am, and realizing the art I didn't mean anything about my worth. So that started really freeing me up. And that's where the whole switch to this creative encourager came in, because I know so many people struggle with, they got to find that style. They got to hone it in. The goal is comfort. The goal is, once I get there, then I can just glide or whatever. And that's what I did because of my own struggles. So yeah, I'm trying to help people to recognize that they start with a full plate. Whatever they're going to do is just coming, and part of the bonus of life is to be able to create, but it has nothing to do with my happiness and worth. So anyway, back to style. I tried all kinds of things. Cats were showing up, dogs, any animal, bears. I was doing everything for Hallmark. And then I started, towards the time when I thought I might want to try something else, I was painting these large scale paintings back here, non-objective paintings with Nicholas Wilton as a class. And I retired in 2016. And like I said, I did this for a year, and I was doing cut paper. I mean, at Hallmark, we did everything. We did cut paper. We learned the computer finally. So a lot of Photoshop. My style was all Photoshop and Procreate for a while, but there was still something in there that, it looked like something I did, but I don't know how it happened. I worked really hard to think I could get it to happen, and that never worked. It happened because I was doing a lot. I was creating every day. I started doing those 100-day challenges on Instagram, and started off with cut paper, and I kind of went into all kinds of different things. I was really trying to get my hands off computers and get my hands into paint again. So I mostly do watercolor now with mixed media, and occasionally play with gouache, or once in a while pick up my iPad to do some Procreate. So the images you're going to see are kind of back. I think they start in 2012, and I was still at Hallmark, and I started just drawing because I never did work for myself. Talk about a person driven by, well, that's okay. Going back there. Okay. I started drawing in a sketchbook, and I was just trying to do stuff that spoke to me, but I felt like I couldn't put a smile on anything really. And cats are really good to do grumpy faces. So I started doing these cats and different things with people, and obviously fish. And then the cat on head thing, cat on head Wednesdays. This was still in my sketchbook. I bring them into my Photoshop and add all the color and texture and all that stuff. So I don't know. One day I was sitting at the table at Hallmark. We always got together for lunch to play with paint and stuff. And I deemed it Cat on Head Wednesday. And I decided to start to do Cat on Head Wednesday. So most of these images have that type of thing going on. This is in gouache. I don't know the years on these because I can't see that information. This is all washi tape and mixed media. I did a 100-day project with washi tape. This is some of my early Procreate work where I was doing very designy, highly influenced by retro stuff. And I really had fun with that. And then I started playing in my sketchbook, or actually it was just reams of paper and doing watercolor. Women and cats, silly women, cats. And it's like a little contrast of what I was messing around with. I've done several of these artists. I'm very good at drawing a likeness from something I'm looking at. So I'm really conscious of that. I don't often look at research, I look at research. This obviously I looked at a lot while I was painting at Van Gogh, but I use research as a jumping off for inspiration, and it's never one piece. It's like I have these Pinterest boards and I'm looking at it all. And as soon as I see something that kind of gives me that feeling, I jump in with art because of my addiction to researching. I could spend weeks researching and get nothing done. So I take the spark and I go with it. So I did a series on these old masters with cats on head. And then obviously just the girls with cats. The one on the left is watercolor. The one on the right has got cut paper.
It's incredible. Let me just try to see. I know you sent me all those attachments. If I can get the years here for you.
It's 2012 on, so it's sort of that that kind of alignment.
It's sorted in that order. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, these were from 2023.
Yeah, that's very cool. I really love seeing that evolution. And sorry, I'm just clicking through backwards here again for everyone to have another peek. But I think it's so interesting that you have that core story, or that core type of image that you're doing, and then you really see different style and skill and everything evolve. I think that's fascinating over, that's like over a decade, right? So
yeah. And once I left Hallmark, I started putting smiles on some of my cats. I had this thing where I thought, if I do a smile on a cat, then it's a greeting card, and that's not good with Hallmark. So, Hallmark would never say that, but I thought that's how I could get away with doing what I'm doing outside of Hallmark. Which
that's
silly.
So funny.
Silly thinking. Lots of silly thinking.
I just wanted to jump into what Terry said about because it just reminded me when you said they're all saying like, this is you, this is your style, and you're like, what is it? And they also have that like, oh, I knew this was yours. I'm like, really? Because I think also and I remind myself of, for example, let's say 6-7 years ago, it had this pressure of, this kind of, it needs to be cohesive. It really needs to be cohesive, but I'm still experimenting. I do have like the idea of what I want to have, but it's not getting there. I can see it's not getting there, but I'm still happy of what I'm creating. But in my mind, it's still not cohesive. And then I remember having that pressure of, how am I going to get there? What should I look? What should I do? How can I be, I don't know, rational or perceptive, let's say perceptive about it. And then when I was thinking about it now, because when I look at it now, it really is cohesive. It just happened. And it's like, how did it happen? It's like magic. And then I remember, because I used to teach languages after I finished faculty. And then somebody would ask me, like, what's the best way to learn a language? And I would say, well, okay, like you can learn, some logic of the grammar. But the best way to learn a language is like, if you want to learn French, you just open a French movie, but it needs to be older one because people will speak French more slow. It will be slow. And then you put a subtitle in English, and then you catch really simple sentences. So you start with a sentence that has like 2 words and then 3 words. And then you read the subtitle, and then you repeat the sentence, and then you repeat the sentence. And then you just repeat. It doesn't mean, you're reading the subtitle, which means that you know what it means. But your brain literally is capable of learning a language because you were born, you learned your own native language. You have the logic of how languages function. So it's the thing of also what Terry said. She started doing these challenges, 30 or 100 day. I'm not sure if I got it, but it was a
100-day project.
Yeah, exactly. So it is that kind of, daily drawing. If I don't know how to draw a horse, I'm going to go and see references. I'm going to draw realistic horses because I'm going to practice. I need to visually observe, where are the legs? How long is the torso? In comparison with the head, how does it look from this? I just don't know how to do it. I need to practice. So it's going to look ugly. Some will look better. And then I'm going to try, okay, I now know how to realistically draw a horse. Now let's try to do my kind of, game, which is like always fun. Let's see how I can simplify it. Let's see how I can do it in one color and with just one line. How can I do it? So it basically becomes like a challenge and a game. And I just do it as a practice. And then, I don't know, a month later, I need to draw a horse for something. I just do it. It's like it's like you let your brain go on autopilot. You let yourself experiment. You're drawing, enjoying, doing these daily practices or projects. And then all of a sudden, it just all fits because it's in a way you're observant of what you're doing and you're experimenting and testing and finding what you like or finding, the style that excites you. So when you find what excites you, and the things you're experimenting and they're working, you repeat and then you repeat and then you repeat. And then you probably, kind of expand on it and then you improve on it. And then you figure it out. It's just like you wake up and it is by magic, like because your brain is on autopilot learning and observing and doing. And then you get to stop. It's a recipe.
No, I think this is so key though, right? I think it is all that repetition, that practice, challenging yourself to, try to approach things maybe a different way. Like you said, limit yourself in some way to push what you might usually do. I think all those tips are really, really helpful for someone that's struggling with finding their style. Thanks for sharing those.
I think that, style kind of sneaks up on you.
It does.
I tried to force it. I mean, I really went through this phase where I was going to if I saw an artist I'd like, I'd try to do their style. And I was kind of really trying to put myself in a box. Yeah. And regardless of that, my style it's part of who you are. It's sort of just, it is a natural thing, but you won't know it until you just do a lot. It's a lot of creativity. And the more fun you can have doing your artwork, the more your style is going to show up. I mean, you can't go at it begrudgingly. I mean, I don't always love working on artwork, but I do it anyway. And as I'm working, sometimes those pieces become the best pieces I've done because like you said, Nina, something in me takes over and I know not to listen to that critical voice that's coming up because I know it's just repetitive thinking that, habits of thought. I just let those go and keep going. And sometimes it just turns into a mess, but that's, you learn so much from that too.
Yeah.
It's your mess. It's nobody else's mess.
Definitely.
You
Yeah.
look different, right?
Yeah.
That's very cool. I love that. We actually have quite a few people watching us live today, which is very exciting. So I'm going to throw up another audience question here as well. So while we're chatting away, if you are watching, why don't you let us know in the chat, what do you struggle with the most when it comes to finding your art style? Maybe we're able to address some of those concerns. And while you're typing away, I am going to give a little bit of my background as well. And I almost feel like I did it backwards, like when I see everything that the way you've gone about it. When I was like a kid, high school kid, I really wanted to be an artist. And I was so intimidated by the people that I deemed to be good artists who decades later, I realized they just had that much more practice. They had been doing it since they were a kid, but I was in class next to them and I'd look at this like, hyper realistic hand or something that they drew. And there was my like, stick figure. And I'm like, well, I guess I just didn't have talent. And I still tried. I didn't even realize this whole like art portfolio and art school. Like I had nothing to show, so I could never apply. But I did go to a liberal arts school and I started as a studio arts minor. I was still like a little conservative. Let's not do the major. Okay, let's just, tack on the minor. And then I realized how much work it was, again, especially because I didn't have a lot of the skill. And so I just gave up and I quit on it. And I just did my major because I was like, I can't be up until 3 a.m. every night drawing a shoe. Like, it's not worth it. In my opinion, it wasn't, right? But I always had this thing in me. I just like wanted to make art, be an artist. So I'll show you kind of where I started. So this is a screen grab from 2008 when I did like an open studios kind of thing. When I lived in Wisconsin, I was like on some local news representing, not my art, like the whole event. But you can see it was like super abstract, like acrylics with spray paint, things like that. So that's kind of where I started. And my story is like, I'll always take a break if there's like a big move or like work gets too busy or something, then all of a sudden there's this huge break of 2 to 3 years. And then I pick it back up. So I think this was like 3 years later, again, this like style, just like really much more, if you know my style now, it's like, I don't see anything in common with it whatsoever, but I loved this. I really had fun. And I lived in San Francisco at the time and it was super cool because they had tech shop. It's closed down, it went bankrupt, but it was this amazing facility where you have like multi-million dollars worth of machinery and you could take a little course to learn each machine. And so I got really into like the laser cutter and I wouldn't just cut, but I would like write poems and have them like edged into the plexiglass and things. And then I would put that on top of photographs that I'd taken that I would like spray paint on and layer it all. And it would end up looking something like this. And like, I had so much fun with it. I really, really loved it. I would try to like get it to sell. I like rented out this little gallery space and like, it was so much fun. I loved this phase. And I still loved it, but I couldn't really get it to sell. And looking back now, I realized that I don't think my art was bad. It was that I'm really bad at marketing and I still have not figured out how to make that work. But whenever I would hit a roadblock, then I would think, well, my art's not good enough. So let me try something else. And I would like fold and start completely new. So then you can see here, I went into flowers, which yes, I consider art. So I had this little like wedding business. I did a lot of freelancing and I really like learned how to create flowers. I would do these flat lays. I loved it. But again, I was like, this is not sustainable. Every time I try to create an image for Instagram, I have to throw down how many hundreds to buy the flowers. I'm not making this money back. So I gave up. And now, okay. Not my best work, but this was like in 2018, I decided, okay, girl, you're finally going to learn how to draw. Like I wanted to learn how to paint, but someone told me that I had to learn how to draw first. And that was a real bummer. But so then I started that. And this is watercolor, which I do now. So this is, quite a few years ago. And you can see I had no idea. Everything's like muddy, messy. I had no idea what I was doing. but this is where I started. And this is kind of what goes back to what all of you said, just with practice, right? So you just have to put in the time. So I continued, like this is very rudimentary, and not because it's a stylized thing. It's just because like I couldn't do it any better at the time. Super simple stuff, not stuff I'm happy with. Like this face is all just like, I look at it and I think it's so bad, but I think that's part of the, like, you have to get through the bad art to get out to your style and get through the good art. So practice. I even tried like urban sketching, but I was so embarrassed to be outside and have people see this work that I didn't think was good. So I stopped that. And then eventually I actually got good. And I'm going to stop it here because it's a ton of images, but I thought I wanted to do like picture book illustration. But while I was in one of those courses, it was so hard for me. And I realized that I was forcing something that I thought I wanted, and that like in this course, I'm like, why is this so difficult? Why am I so far behind? Why is like, I just cannot do it? Why is it taking me like a month to do one page? You know, what is happening? And I realized it's just really not aligned with my strengths or like who I am as a person. And because I found this extreme joy in drawing the background. Like I remember I was drawing an ice cream for the background and I was like, this is so much fun. Like I love doing this, drawing food or flowers or like just these objects that aren't a whole scene. And that's just what lit me up. And so ever since then, if you look on my Instagram or like, you know, back here, that's what I love to do. And that's okay for me. If it's more like commercial or just like, you know, pretty things that don't necessarily tell this whole story and aren't, you know, 32 images that go together. I admire that, but it's not me. And so that was really, really fun to kind of accidentally stumble across my style in that way, just by taking all these different courses, you know, trying all sorts of different mediums, and then being like, wait, this is just, it almost at that point then came like handwriting. Like it's all of a sudden the paintings were a lot better. I was really having fun. And so I really, really think it is a lot about practice and just trying out different things. But I will also say that looking back at my florals and looking back at like the laser cut stuff, I actually really still love it. And it is a lot more of like maybe like again, like how my apartment usually would look and things like that. So that's what I thought was so interesting, Nina, what you said, you know, what you surround yourself with yourself, because I love painting this, but it's not how my life looks, if that makes sense. You know, I don't live in like a cottage core, you know, I have like it's very different. So I thought that was really interesting. And I have to say, I don't know if I'm always going to stick with this. And I know I'm not always going to stick with it. Like it's already developing into something else again. So I think
I just have to share truth with everybody. I do patterns. I love making patterns, but all my clothing is not patterned. I like just white t-shirt. I just like no, you know. Or if I do have a pattern, I would like to make it completely extreme. You know, I want a shirt and then on top and everything in the same. I would go completely crazy. But I usually just don't have patterns in myself.
I love looking at patterns, but like actually wearing them makes me feel so like, I don't know, uncentered. Like I need something solid.
Yeah, there you go. So that's definitely it. I just wanted to add upon what Terry said about forcing yourself to kind of, because I also read a bit of the comments from people, if that's okay, just to go back on that. You know, because when she said about, you know, forcing yourself, putting yourself in a box to do that style, I know a lot of people do that, me as well. It's like, I need to, you know, how to just pressuring yourself. And then also comparing yourself is also what you said about going to school and everybody drawing like this. And I'm, for example, somebody who did graphic design and I did drawing. I know how to observe and draw. I did have lessons, but that was high school. And then I finished actually and have master in languages and teaching. So I didn't go to applied arts faculty, or how it's called. So basically, like, my art is literally just me doing street art and doing my own stuff. That's how it began. But anyways, what was I saying? Yes, comparing yourself with others. So it's one thing to get inspired, right? You see things on Pinterest, and I know you get into this rabbit hole. You like somebody's art, and you're like, wow, like this is the style. I really like it. Like, how do I do that? But what Terry said is like, you cannot, because you are so unique, like your experience of life, what you visually see, what you want to draw, what excites you. And I think that's the most important part. What's the most interesting and what brings you fun and joy? Literally, that's what I like. If I'm going to sit and do something, I want to the best thing I like is doing some illustration. I think the last one was I did some hands and they were all kind of crazy and running around. And I thought I was just laughing at it. I just finished that illustration and I was just laughing with myself, like, this is this is so good. This is so funny, So I'm having fun with myself drawing. So I think, at some point it's like all these things in you or need just to get out. And then you need to actually say to yourself, well, I'm going to turn off Pinterest. I'm going to turn all these references. I'm going to just keep what inspires me. I'm going to keep it in my mind, what inspires me. But I'm going to literally just see what I'm going to discover when I sit by myself and have fun, literally. And in a way, also, like we're, comparing yourself with others is actually just makes no sense because, first of all, we're all equal. We're not better. I'm not better than anybody, and nobody's like worse than me. We're all just equal, and we're all, on a path. I'm here on my path. You're here on your path, and just we're on different paths. So at this stage I'm at, maybe you think my art is amazing, but maybe I think I need to develop it further because I'm just here. I'm just going to continue going. And so it makes no sense to actually make any comparisons. So a good thing to remind yourself while you're discovering your art style or experimenting is that like this kind of challenges you're putting yourself, the ugly phase, and while you're doing your artwork, there is always an ugly phase. And then, there is this kind of final success, and that's your win at this moment you're at, literally. And also I'm just finished. Of course I didn't finish. It's going to take 1 month more, but I finished like the biggest part of my class filming, and I'm doing a sort of experimental documenting. So what I did this time, I thought there is so much misrepresentation of, like on Instagram and social media, you just see my final artwork and you think, oh, everything is easy for Nina, this is beautiful, like that's the final one, but you just never see the struggle, the struggle of me kind of thinking, well, even though I do have a style, I'm still kind of thinking, is this really cohesive? Is it not? Do I want to go this way or this way? Am I going to change this? All these doubts and all these challenges. So I thought what I'm going to do is literally turn on the camera, start sketching, and I'm going to turn on the camera until I finish the whole pattern collection. And I think I have like 60 hours of filming now, which needs to be edited. And then you're going to also see the phase where I'm, oh, this is it. Oh, I like this. I'm going to do everything in this style. And then tomorrow I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to throw away all this, all these kind of ups and downs, and also finding actually the style. Because for this collection I was working on, which is going to be all incorporated into the final class, I was actually struggling to find the style. And, it's not like it's going to be, is it going to be hyper realistic or this? No, of course, it's going to be in the range of the style I do, but it needs to be cohesive for the whole collection. I need to pick the colors to get some sort of vibe. I need to see whether I'm going to go more detailed or less detailed, what kind of symbols am I going to use, how do I refine this language? So it literally took me, the most time it took me was to figure it out. And then when I had one pattern, it just sparked something. And I thought, okay, this is it. Now I have literally one pattern that is perfect and in the style I want. It has all the rules I want to follow. And now I'm using this as my reference, literally as a style reference. And I'm going to compare all the other patterns in a collection to it and develop everything. So also a good exercise for style is definitely developing. Also what Lauren said about her doing 19 cohesive things for blueprint.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's like so good, because you are more observant to make it cohesive. You need a collection. It can be a pattern collection. If you're illustrated, it can be a set of illustrations like Terry did with all these
Cat on
And
head.
yeah, it's just like you get this idea and then just do the whole collection. And I remember my first painting exhibition, that was actually the moment where I had an exhibition and I had to make something that is cohesive. So that was the first time I thought, oh my God, this needs to work in a space. I need to get this thing together.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to get bored and give up on an idea, or, sometimes I just struggle with like crossing that finish line. So I think having like an exhibition to do, or a book that you're putting together, or some kind of deadline, like mine was the trade show, some kind of deadline where you're like, I have to create this body of work, not just like a couple of random pieces, but I have to create a body of work that actually goes together. Sometimes that can be like some healthy pressure to really create a style or a collection that, feels cohesive and goes together and is using like a similar color palette, or just, some of the stylistic elements that really bring the whole collection together.
Yeah, I really like what you're all saying too about kind of having your own reference. Like once you find something that, you kind of think, this is what I want everything to look like, this is what I'm loving, this is the style I do want to present, to refer back to that. So instead of, just having all these outside references, have your own, guiding star within your art of, hey, this is what, I'm working towards. That's an interesting idea. I'm going to pop up the next question for everyone. But before I do that, while we are discussing the next question, if you're watching, feel free to put in your questions as well in the chat. If there's any questions you have about finding your art style, we usually end on that. So we're going to do one more questions here that I've prepared, and then we will get to the audience questions. So I'm going to kind of mix two questions. The first we'll display here, and I'll add the second one for time reasons and merge that. But so
Before we do this,
Yes.
can I just say, I just got an alert from our energy company saying that the power is going to be out here, which will be unfortunate, but I wanted to let you know, if I all of a sudden leave, it's not personal. Hopefully it won't hit my house. Okay.
Oh, goodness.
You may continue now.
We'll try to make this fast. So what I would love to know is whether you think it's crucial for artists who want to build an art business to have a consistent art style, because I know, again, some people have like lots of different things that they like to do, and they struggle with focusing on one. If you think it's crucial, why? And then also, if you do think it's important for an artist who wants to run an art business of some type to have a consistent style, what do you think they can do to try to develop that? Anything, if there's anything you haven't mentioned yet? Anyone want to take a stab at this one?
I will. Yeah, I do think it's really important to have a consistent style, especially if you want your name to be like known for something, right? Like if you think about especially if you're doing licensing or something like that, where your name is going to be on the artwork, especially in that genre, I think that, having an art style that's consistent, that's recognizable, is really going to help you kind of build that legacy for your art, after you're gone, because we're all going to be gone from this earth at some point. And, being able to, I've worked with licensors who, are from the past in the home decor industry. And it's really cool to be able to see people's art live on like long after they're gone, and that it's just like kind of classical. And of course it has its own style and it's recognizable, but it still has that like commercial appeal and people still love it. So for me, that would be a personal goal. But yeah, I do think it's important to have your own art style. That doesn't mean that you can't be a good designer without one. I think that, you can still work as a designer doing freelance work or even licensing, but maybe it's not what you want to put your name on. Maybe it's more kind of under a private label or something like that. But yeah, I do think it's important.
Well, I'll chime in with my point of view. I think it's important to have something you're kind of bringing to the table that can be associated with you. But I think it's real critical not to get bogged down in that, particularly when you're starting out, to experiment and play with all kinds of different things. That's how we find out what we love. We pay attention. I do have a Discovering Your Art Style class through Daily Creating on both Skillshare and teachable. And I didn't know any of this when I started out. Like I said, I was so hyped up and getting that style going so that I could be the style, right? And I wish I'd known that. I mean, luckily I worked for Hallmark for a while, so I got to try a lot of different things. And there wasn't, they were trying to, I was trying to get a style, but at the same time, they wanted you to be a jack of all trades. And, so I was just doing everything, anything that they put in front of me, I would try. And then, after a while, I started doing a lot of projects where we submitted stuff, and that turned the tide more towards what does Terry want to bring to the table that we can write to, or it became less about the assignment that was given me that I'm going to do this style, and more about let's see what comes forth from her, and you just build that up over time, and. Yeah, like I said, I think forcing a style gets people caught in kind of like a vicious circle where they're not listening to what lights them up, like you were talking about, harmony. They're not listening to what gives them that sense of, oh, I'm excited about this. I really want to try that, or like for me, I usually stories and things show up, and the painting process itself is where the ideas come from. It becomes a thing where while I'm painting, I see that it's like it shows itself. I have nothing to do with it. I'm just kind of like, I'm just showing up and doing this. And then it starts to inform me about where it's going to go. And that kind of excitement and enthusiasm and joy in the process doesn't come if I'm trying to hone in, if I'm trying to fit myself in a box. Doing a drawing before sometimes I'll do a thumbnail when it's a complicated layout, but the idea of doing a painting with an actual layout is like the kiss of death. That leaves me no room to just let it happen, to see what where the painting's gonna take me. So, I do admit, this was after 30, 40 years of trying really hard to find a style. That I let go of that. And, I think people can do it sooner than 30 or 40 years if they have a sense of that it's going to come for you naturally. The more you play, the more you enjoy what you're doing. Just notice, pay attention, see what's resonating with you. I don't have a clue whether or not I just answered the question.
You did though. You did. No, absolutely. And I appreciate the different perspective too. And I think it is. I think it's both, right? It's like you want to have a career with an art business. So there are some realities and some limitations and some things that are going to work better for you than others, but also getting crazy hung up on it, especially if you haven't yet developed a ton of skill. Like I do think there is a certain amount of time that you have to invest to develop skill before you can even really think about, oh, is this the style that I want to do? It's like just the basic skills of learning how to draw, or even if you don't want to do realism, just doing a lot of repetition, trying different approaches, I think, and then you can figure that out. And for me, I also feel like I want to rush it, So even though like it's when you're trying to learn a skill and you're trying to develop a style at the same time, I think it's frustrating. So I think you have to, like you said, kind of be kind to yourself and maybe not put that pressure on, but then also be realistic about like, okay, maybe my first year trying to learn how to become an artist is not going to be the year that I sell 20 collections to someone, So it's just having that realistic expectation. And maybe it's not 30 or 40 years, but probably more than a year.
I think not going back to what we've been talking about, but for me, I don't want to say practicing mindfulness, but being fully present with the process and whatever that mind is doing around my style, and I got to get better at this technique, I got to blah, blah. That is stuff to just let it go on by and focus back in, because in my experience, my heart and creativity doesn't necessarily come from my intellectual mind. It comes from that part of myself that's more relaxed and just letting it happen and flowing. So yeah, I do agree. Having skills is really important. And I spent a ton of time learning tons of stuff on how to paint with watercolor, acrylic, wash, the Procreate, Photoshop, just, all that stuff. And yeah, I just, we all kind of wish we had gotten it or sooner. But for me, I decided to go on the long haul on learning things. So yeah, I like to share around that because I don't think it necessarily has to take that long.
But I also think part of the journey, like, it's beautiful. I think sometimes we wish for this end point of, like, once I get there,
Yeah.
but then you're going to look back, and like I look back at, I was doing abstract art in 2008, and it's like I had fun the whole way. And I probably would have had more fun if I was so impatient about, like, oh, this needs to become a profitable business. I need to, if I had just slowed down and enjoyed myself more in the process, I think I probably would have just won more. There would have been no negative aspect about having more fun and letting go.
And also the thing, what you just said, Harmony, is like, and even now, like when you do have a style, I personally, I do enjoy it, but it doesn't mean if I stop enjoying it, I'm just gonna move on. If I stop enjoying doing this kind of things, and I don't know, maybe I won't, but who knows, maybe I do. I will just develop something new. I will just go into that route. It doesn't mean you need to be stuck on whatever you have, because like you have just like a whole life to experiment. And also what Terry said, like to just enjoy what you're doing. That's the whole point of art. Of course, there is like the whole business side, but I think like we all need to be reminded as artists that is why you do art. I sometimes think I draw and illustrate, and I find out many more things about myself while I do that. And that's why I love doing it. And in a way, I was always kind of thinking, right, you need to, there is this whole thing, like you need to have the style so companies know like who to work with. You need to just go to one thing and to have that. And I had like a problem, not regarding style, but regarding like my own growing up and figuring out what I want to do in life, because I never wanted to do one thing. I just always wanted to do many things. I wanted to, and then people would ask me, so what are you doing? And I said, do you have time for me to explain? It's just like I do like 5 or 7 things. I'm not just one. I, for example, did like this street art. Then I used to sew clothing or on backpacks. And then I was writing a book. I wanted to be a writer. I did have a published novel. So I thought, it's just like all just different kind of things. And I was also at some point doing graphic design, web design, copywriting. So it's just like, I like all these things. And then, why do I need to be just one? And then when I started also doing classes, I thought, this is it. Like, this is me writing. This is me teaching, something I also love doing. And I finished actually faculty about, being a teacher, and I'm doing art. So I can combine all these things into what I do. And it's also the thing about style. You can do all these things you want to do. You just need to find a way to make it in a way cohesive. It doesn't need to have to be stopped from doing something. Also, you can, have 2, if you cannot choose from 2 different styles, you can go along and have 2. I think nothing is stopping you if you're enjoying doing that and you want clients to ask you to do that kind of work. I just suggest don't promote something you don't want to do.
Right. Don't. Good idea.
Because they will ask and you'll be like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, please. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's exactly that, don't promote something that, you don't want the work for, or it's like, I still have those, realism skills from art school, from growing up. And I do still enjoy like drawing a portrait or, doing a pencil drawing that is a more realism style, but I'm not going to put that out there, on my Instagram, because I don't want to do commissions. It's also like such a departure from, maybe I would post it to my stories or something, but like if someone's going to see my Instagram profile, like I do want it to look a little bit cohesive and be more about my licensing work. So I think focusing in on that, but agreed with everything that y'all are saying. I think if, we all wrote the same word, we're all going to have different handwriting, right? But we still have those fundamentals of like, we know what the letters are. We know how the letters are supposed to, the shapes of the letters. We know how to hold the pencil. We know how to write in a somewhat straight line, from left to right. So like there's certain rules that we follow, and yet our handwriting would all look different. And I think that's a very good example for an art style. Like we know the fundamentals of color, we may apply it in a different way. We know kind of the stylistic principles and artistic elements, the visual elements of, composition and texture and line and shape and all those things that play into an art style, but we're going to apply them all a little bit differently. And yeah, coming from the heart, I mean, it's so true. Like you have to feel a little bit relaxed, or you're not going to enjoy the process, and you're going to feel the most relaxed in, a space that feels the most natural to you. So whether it's, Harmony, you talking about, the early work that you did, if that's part of it, or if it's the watercolor, for me, it was like, I kind of got tired of looking at a screen all day, especially after so many years working in house. And so now it's like the end of the day, I've been on the computer all day. Like that's kind of what's gotten me away from digital art and sort of back to, getting in there with my hands with gouache or some kind of paint or drawing. Like I'm picking up my art supplies again. And so that's also played into my style. So I think it can evolve and will evolve throughout your life. But like everyone mentioned, other people can kind of come and say, oh yeah, I can tell that you did that and that's your style. Like I've had people say that to me as well. And like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah, I think feeling relaxed, working from the heart, but also having kind of a critical eye, not to be, negative, but just to say like, okay, this is cohesively, going together, and having a little bit of just being able to analyze it. It's kind of like going to an art critique in college where, if you can kind of like check your ego a little bit, you might actually like learn something. You can feel open to getting feedback that's just going to improve your work. And so I think being able to do that for yourself is also important.
That's an interesting take, to even if maybe you haven't been able to go to art school, to try to get critiques from maybe other professional artists, or I'm sure there's some kind of coaching option. It can be kind of brutal. I've definitely had feedback before too, but it's usually true. And, it's just, again, if you're trying to get to a professional level, there's going to be, a certain level that you're going to have to reach if it's not just a hobby. So I think that's really good feedback as well to take in. And can I just say one quick thing, which is that I think it's cool if you have different styles, if you have multiple styles, if you want to switch styles. But I do think, just from a consumer perspective, from the artists I love, like if you do that, it's this interesting situation, because as an artist, you are a person and a business. So it's kind of like it's one and the same. And I think for the audience, like just be prepared. I've seen quite a few artists that I've interviewed or that I know in recent years, make a switch, and just be prepared. Some people are following you because they love everything about you. They love you as a person. They love all your experimentation. They're going to stick around. And there's some people that followed you because they love the brand of whatever art you're making at the time they followed you. And they're going to leave, and that's fine, right? So I think like there are realistically implications of having multiple styles or changing over time. But like, I mean, if anything, I don't know, just sell off the brand or something. If you really don't want to lose that audience or that money coming in, and you want to change. But I just think it's important to be realistic about what that might mean if you change it, but also not to feel boxed in, because like you're going to make an art style that you're miserable with at some point just because, someone has bought into it before. I think it's a tricky question though, as far as how you would change it.
I'm always for, because I in a way have problem with this kind of branding yourself and business, and because I'm always going for the thing in my mind. I know business is business and we all need income and stuff, but I always think like it can be better. I am not a brand. I'm also not a machine or whatever. So I am going to, let's quote, brand myself, but as a human, an artist, and somebody who's being honest by sharing with an audience or with a following or with my students. And I think that's like the main thing for me to follow and to have in my mind. So I'm a human and I'm honest. And then if I switch, I switch. And then you come along or you don't come along.
Right.
And that's exactly it. Because thinking about, myself and all these things I do as really a business and, like kind of corporation and brand is like definitely something I don't want for myself. I don't feel, because being a brand is also being in a sort of machine. And I can enjoy being more on this level of mindfulness, also what Terry was talking about, and sharing with others. And I also love teaching and sharing.
And I think that's a healthy and good way to go about it. So I'm definitely not suggesting otherwise.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if I follow an artist and I've loved them for years and they completely switch styles and I don't like it,
that's absolutely it.
I think that's human.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. That's it.
I knew people that love the new style. So I think you should still absolutely do what's in your heart, So
exactly.
I think that's important.
I'm just saying this because I know a lot of people are feeling a lot of pressure. And the pressure is like what's really stopping anybody from doing what they want to do.
Yeah.
I, in a way, like I don't see myself really changing the style, but I'm always promoting the thing. Like if you don't feel good about it, it's your life. It's like it's as long as it is, you should just do what really fits you best and what you really enjoy. And if you want to switch completely careers, so my one idea is to switch careers at some point and become a documentary filmmaker.
Awesome. I love it.
And when the time comes, I'm gonna do that.
That's incredible. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of, doing what's in your heart. I mean, I do think there was, I know. Here's my problem. I do think the business side is important as well. If you want it to be anything other than a hobby. And I really like the quote, though, I think it was Lila Rogers that said something like, people buy your joy. So I feel like that's that perfect combination of like, do what is, in your heart, do something joyfully, find something you love, and that will then translate. So don't stay stuck in something or put pressure on yourself, just to become a brand or just to make money or, that's not the goal. But yeah, that I think there's two sides to it and it usually does translate as well. So
yeah, I love what you said. It's definitely that from Lila Rogers. It's that joy and enthusiasm. I think, when I'm most enthusiastic about the topic of the class, people just see it because I'm just, I just go, I'm over the place. I think that happened when my class about matchbox labels. I was just obsessed about matchbox labels, and I made a whole class about the style of matchbox labels. And the whole research of history, design, typefaces. I don't know. I was just like beyond excited. And I think like those are like two. They're not the most popular, but like one of the most popular classes for sure.
Oh, that's super cool.
And I wanted to.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm not, because I remember I just wanted to say something regarding what Lauren said about kind of having this critique to kind of be like objective and kind of critiquing. And then you said something about also finding somebody else who can critique your artwork. I just wanted to give a really quick tip to anybody watching if they want to try to be more objective towards their own art. One thing I'm also mentioning in the class of observing is learning is something I also learned in high school in a class called visual observation. So what we did, we took, paintings from some famous painters throughout history, and we would print them out, and then and then we would like make reference, like what is the composition? How are they doing this? How are they doing that? So we would literally observe the whole painting, and that's also what I'm doing in the class. I'm showing how I'm observing different artwork that I like and and the style I like. So I'm going to show you quickly really the reference. So I'm also like talking about this image. I'm talking about, the negative space here and how it's, connecting to, where am I? To the road and like the simplicity and like you have the white space here. So literally what you can do is find things you like and observe them and see what's working there. And then when you have your own artwork, you're going to also try to be objective and think, okay, maybe this is too clustered. Maybe what I need is exactly what I saw on this painting. Maybe I need more white space that's going to go through or make a balance. So you can also do something like that and try to be your own art critic. So that's just a little tip.
Cool approach. I really like that. Adding a little bit of analysis on top. We are pretty long as far as our conversation now. I promised you all about an hour 15, so we're already over. We're going to do 2 really quick audience questions. Let's not answer them in too much detail, but I think we can get a few quick answers out. So let's do this one first by RT. I'm very new and intuitive in art. I feel that I lack vocabulary for art styles and terminology. How can I learn more or get familiar? Any thoughts?
I think watch. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, I was just going to say, I do have a free workshop called Sketchbooking Your Style. So that's a good way if you're not familiar at all. It's just a very like beginner friendly process where, you can take a sketchbook, work in it from beginning to end and kind of see that progression of your style. And I paint 4 motifs in the sketchbook. And I do a different style for each one just to show you like kind of that decision-making process. We talk about shape, texture, color, and all of that. And I give you even like a little rough sketch to get started with. So if you're not familiar at all, that's kind of a good starting place.
That sounds really fun.
That's fantastic.
Let's link below as well.
Yeah.
If you want to check it out.
Awesome. I was just going to say that.
Go ahead. Answer.
What Lauren just said. I think if you don't have any money and you can't do these classes online and that YouTube is an amazing place to learn talks like these. You could just type in what you're interested in, watercolor, whatever, and you'll get millions of teachers that are teaching that stuff. Sure. So yeah, just fill yourself up with as much as possible and have fun while you're doing it.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. So our last question for the day. Zkush asks, hi, I often got mentally blocked when it comes to choosing a style and getting inspired because many times I feel like it's not good enough. Is there any way of getting better at it?
Yes, I'm going to say it. Just tune out. But and also the question is, why do you think it's not good enough compared to what? It's like, I think that's like, I think like the best thing to do is to actually tune out everything around you and just do like, I don't know, 1 hour daily drawing of something.
Scribbling, anything.
Scribbling. Exactly, yeah. Terry. Exactly. It's like, I remember I was like at some very, very bad mood. I was paralyzed to do anything. And what really kept me going is mindlessly doodling. Just mindlessly, just doodling and just drawing something with a liner pen. And those things actually became like the best illustrations I have now. But they were just mindless drawings. I think that's like also what we talked about. Just try to be on autopilot. Also what Terry was saying, just like, it's not about rational, like, am I doing this good? Is this good enough? When will I, no. You just do, you tell yourself 1 hour of sketching, doodling, drawing mindlessly, and that's it. And then after a month, you check check the progress. Don't check like on internet, just check your like first sketch and then check the last one. And then you will be like, wow.
That's great. That's all the progress that really matters, right? Is how you're progressing personally. That's great. Thank you. I am going to let you, as the panel, have the final word. Is there any point that you really wanted to make, any tip that you wanted to bring up before we end the live stream?
I highly recommend having your inspiration close by. That's my biggest tip. And they like it too.
And a nice cup of tea.
Yeah, nice cup of tea. Glass of water.
Well, then we expect to see many, many dogs for your next book.
Yes. Well, I don't have a dog, so I'll have to go out and borrow my neighbor's dog. But yeah, I just, having fun is so critical. And not only, it's like you're not just, it's not like, for me, it's not a shutting out of what's happening, although that's what ends up happening. It's more like a focusing in. And then with my brain is always shooting stuff across about, it's got a lot to say about everything I'm doing. I just realized that's just pattern. It's like, it doesn't mean anything. It's just crap going through. Thank you for sharing, and just keep playing and being in the moment with your painting or whatever it is you're doing.
And being a child, I think I have to add, being a child, actually remembering how fun it is to just play around and experiment. And also another thing is, like, I always say, like, it's also like, try to imagine yourself being a scientist. So you're experimenting, you're trying to find the recipe, like the perfect ingredients for your concoction or whatever you're making, right? So when you're a scientist, like, most of the experiments will fail, right? But then, like, the ones that succeed are also like something that is going to make new inventions, or,
like building blocks.
And it's also like, there is no failing. There is never failing. It's just you learning and constantly improving. So it's just like a whole process of doing what you love to do and believing and actually trusting the process that you will reach whatever you want to reach. But like, on that road, all these like challenges and like you thinking you failed is just like your brain constantly learning and improving. And it's just that, being a child, enjoying experimenting, and then and repeating all that.
I love that analogy. That's so fun. I really enjoy that. Taking that pressure off of, like, if you're a scientist, you're experimenting, you're trying to find your style, and a lot of it is going to fail, and then you're going to have those little pieces you put together to finally kind of see that light at some point. So I think that's a really, really cool view that takes a lot of the pressure off and just makes it sound that much more fun again. And that's what it's all about. All right.
Yeah. Well, someone's asking in the chat about whether this is recorded. And
absolutely.
Because it can and might.
Yeah. So this is recorded. No issue. You can watch the replay immediately. So there's nothing I have to do. It'll be at this very same link. So feel free to save it, put a like on it, whatever you want to do, so that you can find it again. Yep. You can restart it at any time and watch it on your own time. Thanks for letting me know, Terry. All righty. I think we are going to wrap up this conversation. Thank you all for your generous sharing, your time, your knowledge, your inspiration. It was really, really cool to hear from you. And thank you to everyone watching as well for your numerous comments in the chat. It was really fun. And we'll see you again at the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Bye.
I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode, that you got something out of it, that it made you think. And if it did, if there's anything that you really are going to take away from this podcast, why not pop on over to some of the artists that we had on today's podcast and drop them a note, give them a comment and a follow, and let them know, hey, you said this and this, and this is what that means for my art journey in the future. I think they would love to hear that, because it's just, you never know when you actually touch another artist, when you actually inspire someone. It's this really strange thing to put something online and then you don't really know the effect. So if that happened, drop them a note over on their accounts. Also, obviously, feel free to put a note in the chat or in the comments on this video. It really, really means a lot to get that feedback. And if you enjoyed this format, please make sure to also go and check out my channel. There are 14 other episodes that have already been recorded at the time of today's recording. They're all art business focused, and I think you might find one or two that you enjoy. So have a little peek through the playlist, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks.